Point Spread Weekly, vsin.com/subscribe. That's where you get it. You get your free edition there right now by doing so. It is well worth your time. Again, 64 pages this week. And there it is. Let me just bring it up one more time in case you didn't know. Catholics versus convicts. What a story that was. Brent, heavily featured in that ESPN 30 for 30. Football free-for-all, Gill Alexander, Bill Krackomberger, Warren Sharp, all ready to go. And we bring in, to begin the discussion on Week 10 matchups, from Rotoworld, senior writer there, the matchup guy, Evan Silva. Good morning, Evan.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Evan, listen, before you get into one of these matchups, I want to tell you that Todd Wright, who hosts his own fantasy football podcast and was the famous host, for those who are of a certain age, of the All Night with Todd Wright radio show on ESPN Radio back in the day, which to this day is one of my favorite radio shows of all time. Todd is on the show every Thursday in the previous hour, and he actually texted me after the show last week. He goes, could you tell Evan to put out his matchup piece a day earlier so that we can discuss it on ours? He says you do. He just wanted to compliment you. You do a spectacular job with it. So just a shout out to you from Todd.
Oh, well, that means a lot, man. Tell Todd that I said thank you.
Indeed. Evan Silva's work at Rotoworld comes from a fantasy perspective, but also some insights into our handicapping as well, betting-wise. What you got? What's your first one this week, Evan?
So this Jets-Bucks game, it opened at 41. It was at 41.5 as of yesterday morning, as of Wednesday morning. And it has moved to 43.5 in most spots. Like to see that. We have a lot of revenge narratives in this game. Ryan Fitzpatrick, of course, against the Jets. He even said publicly this week that this game means more to him than most games. Josh McCown, of course, played recently for the Buccaneers. Austin Seferian-Jenkins played for the Buccaneers. He was drafted by the Buccaneers. And, I mean, he implicitly admitted this week that he kind of has some disdain for Dirk Cutter, who kind of didn't stick with him during some difficult times in his life. He has since, overcome those difficult times, and now is a top 15 NFL tight end, has been having a pretty good season. Has had a couple of touchdowns pulled off the board in his last 3 games, and that's been frustrating from a fantasy standpoint. But some interesting narratives in this game, and also some reasons to like this game from a data-backed perspective. In terms of Ryan Fitzpatrick, so the Buccaneers, he would be facing off with a Jets defense that has kind of exposed itself as being a pass funnel. I mean, the Jets are back to playing very good run defense. That has been a staple throughout the Todd Bowles era. We saw LaShawn McCoy in their last game was able to do nothing against the Jets defensive front. And I think that Doug Martin is probably likely to struggle, and that's going to put a lot onto the plate of Ryan Fitzpatrick. Now, that can have negative results, of course. Ryan Fitzpatrick is always a guy who's going to throw a couple of balls to the defense, and it's just up to the defense to catch them. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But Ryan Fitzpatrick is a gunslinger. And we saw him come into that Arizona game in Week 6, and now he was in a negative game script situation. But he put a lot of points on the board in that game. He's also a quarterback that is capable of producing with his legs, and the Jets, being a man coverage defense that their back 7 defenders will turn their backs to the quarterback to go run and cover their guys on passing plays. So the Jets will leave some gaps for quarterbacks that are willing to scramble, and they have thus allowed the most rushing yards in the AFC to opposing quarterbacks, almost 200 rushing yards on the season. And then you're removing Mike Evans from the Buccaneers passing game, which is not ideal. But I think that Cameron Brate can really get it done. He's actually tied with Mike Evans for the team lead in red zone targets this year. And so taking away Mike Evans, Cameron Brate is in position to get a lot of targets, I think, in scoring position. I went back and watched that Cardinals game where Ryan Fitzpatrick entered, and the guys that he was looking at specifically in the middle of the field were Cameron Brate and Adam Humphries. Adam Humphries, a slot receiver, sort of like a poor man's Julian Edelman. I think that he is a guy who can have a good game against the Jets. The Jets have really struggled against slot receivers in their last 3 games. Gave up 7 for 93 and a touchdown to Jarvis Landry. Gave up 6 for 74 and a touchdown to Mohamed Sanu. 6 catches to Jordan Matthews the other night. So I think that these sort of complementary receivers can step up. And then, of course, you have Deshaun Jackson, who will be technically the Bucs' #1 receiver this week. He's going to be facing off with Morris Claiborne, who has not played in a game since week 8 due to a foot injury and has never been a speed guy. He ran 4.5 flat coming out of LSU. I think to this day, Deshaun Jackson still runs in the 4.3s, and I think he can get behind Morris Claiborne. On the other side, it looks like Matt Forte may not play. He popped up on Wednesday as a no practice due to knee swelling, swelling in the same knee that cost him a bunch of time last year. That means we get a lot of Bilal Powell, and Bilal Powell has been very good whenever he has gotten expanded opportunity. Very efficient runner, very good in the passing game, and the Bucs, of course, have really struggled on defense, including in run defense over their last 5 games, giving up over 4.7 yards per carry to opposing running backs. They've also given up the 11th most receiving yards in the league to running backs. And then Robbie Anderson, I think, is in a very good position here with Josh McCown. If you just look at all the big games that the Buccaneers have given up to opposing perimeter receivers, and that's where Robbie Anderson plays. You know, he's a speed guy on the outside. Stephon Diggs, 8 catches for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. Deontay Thompson has had 2 big games against the Bucs this year on 2 different teams. Odell Beckham, 7 catches for 90 yards. Brandon Cooks, 5 for 85. Chris Hogan, when he was playing on the outside against the Bucs, 8 for 74 and a touchdown. John Brown had his best game of the season against the Bucs. Ted Ginn last week, 4 catches for 59 yards and a touchdown. So these speed guys are hurting the Bucs, and I think that Robbie Anderson can get into that. And so I think that this game, you know, as it has been bet up, I mean, I think that that's the smart play here. I don't know. What do you guys think about this game?
It is the rare game where certainly the only game this week where both the total and the side has moved significantly. Again, the total from 41 to 43.5. The game from a pick'em to the Jets, as Evan mentioned, being favored by 2.5. Just as a note, not that this means anything, but we talk about the perception of these teams. When CG Technology puts out their lines for the entire NFL season way back in April, any guesses, Bill, as to what this line was back then?
I would think it's definitely different than it is now.
It is significant. Tampa Bay was an 8-point favorite back in April in this matchup.
No, the Jets have, I think they're like 6, didn't they cover like 6-0-1, like something like that I was reading this year, like the last 7 games? Didn't I read? So the Jets are actually covering a lot more games than people thought this year. And it's funny, when in preseason, I remember there was some huge bet against the Jets plays. So I'm sure, I don't know the numbers right now, the first few weeks, the bookmakers, in anticipation of bets against the Jets, were lining them very, very, very juicy numbers for the Jets. I don't know if that's happening anymore, but even last week, they've been winning. They've been winning outright. They're taking points and they're winning outright, so they're doing pretty good.
You are correct. Jets after 0-2 after an 0-2 start ATS for the season, 6-0-1 ATS, their last 7. Warren, I know you talked about this game a little earlier. Anything to add?
Yeah, the only thing that I'll add here, Evan covered it pretty well, but one thing that I like about this matchup is you have a road team in the Jets with a quarterback who is actually exceeding expectations. A lot of people are down on him, but he's actually playing really well in this offense. They're going to be able to run the football. And when you have McCown coming in and he can lean on the run game and they can pass off of that, especially with Robbie Anderson over the top, that's a great formula for success. And then conversely, even though it's a totally different situation, you have the home team, in this case, the Bucs, and you have a quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick where they're not going to really be able to run the ball, as Evan indicated. They don't have a great run game in terms of their year-to-date rankings. They're like bottom 10 in the league, and they're going to be struggling to run the football. So they're going to be having to pass the ball a lot. So you have a team that's home, quarterback that should be somewhat comfortable throwing the football down the field, and you've got a road team who should be able to move the ball with the ground and then pass off of that. I think it sets up pretty well.
Warren, who, by the way, I should mention, I said it earlier in the show, dead on about the whole Deshaun Jackson thing. Warren, in his Pro Football Preview this offseason, saying that when a wide receiver of the ilk of Deshaun Jackson goes from one team to another, it typically ends up hurting the team he leaves more than it does helping the team he goes to. Absolutely, through half a season has been the case in terms of Deshaun Jackson not helping the Bucs. Jameis and Deshaun just not having chemistry, and the Skins definitely in their wide receiving core the worse for it. So shout out to you on that, Warren. Evan, next game, sir.
Saints Bills. So this game opened at 48.5, and it looks like it took like some significant early money on the under. And I thought that was interesting because I think that both of these teams are in position to be productive in this game. We can start with the Bills. So the Saints have played much better defense recently. However, they really haven't been tested in a while. I mean, they faced Brett Hundley in his first NFL start. Then they faced Mitchell Trubisky. And then they faced Jameis Winston, who was hurt and got pulled for Ryan Fitzpatrick last week. So we have not seen them tested by a competent passing game or a competent offense altogether in quite some time. And I think that the Bills do have, although they did not show particularly well until what amounted to garbage time in their last game against the Jets, that was just kind of a tough spot, on a short week on the road. Public was all over the Bills in that game and just got smashed in that game. But now they go back home where Tyrod Taylor has been much better historically. Since the beginning of last season, Tyrod Taylor has an 18-4 touchdown to interception ratio as a passer in home games, only 9-4 in road games during that same time span. The Saints have given up the 6th most rushing yards to quarterbacks in the NFL. And Tyrod Taylor, of course, is second in the NFL among quarterbacks in rushing attempts. So I think that he can have success as a runner and as a passer. And I think it's also notable that although the Saints have played better defense and their strength really is their pass defense, they're still giving up a lot of big plays in the passing game. They've allowed the 7th most completions in the NFL of 20-plus yards. And Tyrod Taylor, not necessarily a precision passer, but a very good deep ball thrower. And right now, I mean, you look at his weapons and how they have improved over the course of the season. Looks like he's going to get Charles Clay back, his reliable tight end this week. They've added Kelvin Benjamin to the mix. At very least, he can occupy the coverage of Marshawn Lattimore, who's been, Pro Football Focus right now has Marshawn Lattimore as the number one cornerback in the entire NFL as a rookie. That's very rare to see, but it's very, very true. Due to shutting down receivers on a weekly basis. But Kelvin Benjamin, at very least can occupy his coverage and or add some touchdown probability to this passing game. And then they've got Deontay Thompson, who has given them 2 big games out of 3 so far since they picked him up off the street. He's a guy that Tyrod Taylor played with on the second team offense in Baltimore. And so they have a rapport established from there. Zay Jones got off to a very slow start as a rookie receiver out of East Carolina, but he has come on lately. So the weapons have improved over the course of the year for Tyrod Taylor. And I also think that this is a very good rebound spot for LaShawn McCoy. I think that the weakness for the Saints defense is against the run. They are 28th in Football Outsiders run defense DVOA, and they've also given up the 8th most receiving yards to running back. So I think that this is a good game for the Bills offensively, and the Saints offense right now is a juggernaut, and I think that the Bills defense has reached a point where it is a little bit overrated. The Bills have given up 300 or more passing yards in 3 of their last 4 games. Their run defense has not been as strong lately. They traded away Marcel Darius. And then in the passing game for the Saints, Michael Thomas has lopsided road game splits, which is not something that you would expect from a player, that plays with Drew Brees, who has strong home game splits at the Superdome throughout the course of his career. But Michael Thomas is a guy who it seems like they look for more on the road. his road game splits are really, really strong. So I think that this game is now to a point where, I think it's an interesting over game because it was bet down so much after that opening line.
Yeah, 48.5 to 46.5. And as Evan Silva mentions here from Rotoworld, despite a very bullish outlook on both of those offenses that he just went through. Warren Sharp from Sharp Football Analysis, sharpfootballstats.com. Any thoughts on this one, sir?
Yeah, I think that one of the things Evan raised was pretty interesting with regard to the run defenses that the Buffalo Bills have faced. I mean, they really haven't had a juggernaut schedule since they came off the bye week. We were projecting the trajectory of LaShawn McCoy's season to be in the meat right now, where they're going to get a lot of success chewing off of the teams that they are going to be facing. And the Saints certainly are there right now, ranking fifth worst in terms of run defense. So you would think theoretically that they should be able to get the ball and have a very balanced offense. And if they can get the run game going, Evan mentioned this, but the Saints' second worst explosive pass defense by my metrics, the Bills, the 10th best explosive pass offense. So if you can, again, this is one of those situations where while passing is more conducive to winning games in the NFL, if you can pass off of the run, it's even more dangerous. And if the Bills can get that run game going and then use Tyrod Taylor to hit some things over the top, you don't have to throw into like the teeth of this defense consistently, the teeth of the Saints pass defense and Lattimore and going up against these guys with regularity. But when you run the ball and these guys have to cheat up a little bit, or they might be playing the tendencies and play to the run, and then you can hit them with some of these plays over the top, you can crank out 30 to 40 yards in one single punch. And that's, I think, the way that the Bills offense should be headed in this game. But when you talk about the Saints offense, definitely one of the best offenses out there. You do wonder what they're going to do on the road in this environment. I mean, they tend to have a much higher variance when they go on the road. They're playing in the weather. It might not look as good. They're playing in better conditions. It might look okay. It might not. I mean, there's just a lot of variance with the Saints going on the road. Buffalo is not always the most friendliest places to play for a dome team in November. The weather doesn't look too bad right now. I guess that could always change, but there's some question marks I have about the Saints offense, but I like the way that I think the Bills offense could contribute to that.
Yeah, weather looking good right now. We talked about that earlier. No precipitation expected. Temperatures in the high 30s, low 40s. But as Warren said, that could change between now and kickoff. New Orleans at Buffalo right now. New Orleans 3-point favorites on the road. Reduced juice. You even see some 2.5s out there right now. Total, as we mentioned, at 46.5. Before we go to break, Bill Krackomberger. Bill, tell me the truth here. If you had to rank what you enjoy betting these days, let's talk NFL totals, NFL sides. Let's talk NBA totals. MLB, rank it for me in your enjoyment level or your profitability right now.
Right now at this time?
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be baseball, but baseball was really good this year.
Talk about this year, though. Yeah. Include that this year.
Okay. I enjoy betting NBA second halves, first halves, and second halves. It's a unique line. It comes right up. The offshore lines come up, and, of course, the Vegas casinos copy that line. The offshore lines are hit immediately, and the Vegas lines, I try to pound the Vegas lines. I enjoy doing that. It's a daily thing. I do it every day. But I just enjoy beating the number in general. It's not as good as winning the game, but it's
Isn't that funny
enjoyable.
How that psychology is? Yeah.
It's almost as enjoyable though. Beating the line and getting a number that no one else can get. So that's something I like to do a lot.
Yeah, I was trying to get out there is that the NFL sides is not your favorite thing in the world, not even close.
No way.
And a lot of nuggets in there. One, yes, when it comes to second half lines, bookmakers simply don't have the time they do to calibrate those lines. They have to put it out quickly, and so there are opportunities there, and Bill takes advantage of that. And I think the other nugget there, which you mentioned, is it is, in a certain way, if you bet long enough, if you do this for a living, beating that line in some perverse way. Yes, obviously it's a profit and loss thing, and you want to win the money, but in some weird way, beating the line is often just as satisfying. And again, we've said it before, the definition of a sharp bettor, ultimately, the definition comes down to the rate at which you beat that closing line, because that is the best predictor of your future success from a bookmaker standpoint, beating that closing line. So there's some math to that.
There is, because now if I go over in the Jets, I go over 41, then if it goes to 43, Well, then mathematically, if you wanted to still go over the 41 that I have, you lay 10 cents for each half of a point. So therefore, you're actually going to lay 140 to 100 compared to 110 to 100. So I know in the end, I have a mathematical edge by only laying 110 to 100. If there was a sellback option, I'd actually be able to scalp my bid and actually take back more than the 110 that I laid.
Bill Krackomberger, Warren Sharp, Evan Silva, more matchups coming up week 10, and we will answer the questions as we always do, which is the big favorite these gentlemen believe is the most likely to lose outright, and which game do they want no part of when it comes to sides. All on a numbers game right here at VSiN.
It's a numbers game, live from the tip of the strip in Las Vegas. Get your fill of numbers even after the show is over by following the crew on Twitter, @BeatingTheBook and @VSiN Live.